The movie begins with Miso, a middle-aged woman, visiting an art gallery where a striking portrait of herself is on display. An employee at the gallery approaches her and explains that they discovered her through the artist of the painting. The employee also reveals that Miso's best friend, Haein, used to write a blog regularly. However, Miso, who seems to be dealing with unresolved issues, abruptly leaves the gallery, disappointing the employee. As Miso heads toward the elevator, she unexpectedly encounters Jin-woo, Haein's ex-boyfriend. Curiosity gets the better of him, and Jin-woo inquires about Haein's whereabouts and their current relationship. However, Miso remains silent and simply enters the elevator. Back at her house, Miso starts searching for Haein's blogs online and delves deep into their content. Through the blog, Miso reminisces about their journey as friends, from their initial meeting to all the happy times they once shared. The scene transitions to the past, specifically in 1998 when both girls are younger and meet for the first time. Miso, who has recently transferred schools, is introduced to the class by the teacher. She isn't particularly interested in academics and displays a rebellious attitude, fleeing from the classroom when the teacher asks her to take a seat. Concerned about her, Miso's mother follows her outside but fails to persuade her to return. After school, Haein notices that Miso has left her school bag behind and decides to return it to her. Eventually, she spots Miso standing at the edge of a cliff. Haein musters up the courage to join Miso there, and it is during this moment that the foundation of their friendship takes root. Later, Haein invites Miso back to her house and introduces her to their family cat. As they enjoy themselves, Miso loses track of time, prompting her worried mother, Lee, to arrive at Haein's house. She scolds Miso and demands that she return home. From their conversation, it becomes evident that Miso's father is absent from their lives, and she yearns to fulfill her dream of moving to Seoul with her mother. The following day, Miso returns to Haein's house to pass the time. As they play together, Haein unveils her talent for art by drawing a perfect image of a cat. Miso, who never really had a passion for anything, is greatly impressed. Days later, Miso's mother has to travel to Seoul for urgent work, so Miso is left in Haein's care. Haein's family embraces her as one of their own, providing a nurturing environment during her mother's absence. As the years pass, both girls enter high school, with Miso pursuing her passion for art at an academy, while Haein follows her father's wishes by studying education to become a teacher. Despite their diverging paths, their bond remains unbreakable, and they continue to meet regularly, escaping their respective classes. In the next scene, Miso arrives on a scooter to pick up Haein, and the two friends head to a nearby town, specifically to a jewelry shop. While they explore the shop, Miso suggests that Haein should take the bold step of getting her ears pierced since her birthday is the following day. Haein agrees, and the shopkeeper pierces her ear. However, amidst their playfulness, Miso accidentally breaks a couple of items, causing the shopkeeper to chase them away. In the evening, Miso joins Haein's family for dinner and expresses her desire to have Haein hang out at her apartment for the night. Haein's mother consents, and later, we see the girls in Miso's apartment, engaging in heartfelt conversation about their lives. During their conversation, Miso shares her unconventional belief that it's better to die at a young age rather than face life's hardships. Hearing this, Haein gets angry and scolds her friend, warning her not to think or speak of such things again. The following morning, Miso surprises Haein by taking her to an abandoned house as a birthday treat. She presents her with a pair of earrings as a gift, but unfortunately, only one of Haein's ears is pierced. So, she decides to wear one earring and requests Miso to keep the other one. In the midst of their conversation, Haein confides in Miso about her newfound crush, Jin-woo, a student from another school whom she noticed during a recent basketball match. Surprisingly, the next day, Miso goes to Jin-woo's school and confronts him, even though they don't know each other. She forcefully urges him to accept Haein's proposal and warns him against breaking Haein's heart. The boy agrees. The scene then shifts to a bustling dining hall where students from both schools are preparing for a dinner event. Jin-woo is present, and Haein can be seen stealing glances at him. The students decide to play an engaging name game, and when it's Haein's turn, she selects Jin-woo's name. It is at this point that their friendship truly begins. She asks Jin-woo if she can draw his portrait, and he gladly agrees. So, with all her artistic talent, she creates a beautiful portrait of Jin-woo. Returning to the present, Miso is deeply moved as she reads blogs with tears in her eyes. The blog's timeline progresses to 2004, when Haein brings Jin-woo to Miso's workplace, a nightclub. Our protagonist desperately tries to hide her face from Jin-woo but fails. Following this, Miso, Haein, and Jin-woo spend time together, enjoying their vacation. One day, the trio decides to explore a cave and embark on a hiking adventure. Haein gets tired along the way and takes a break, but Miso continues the journey alone. Concerned for her friend, Haein urges Jin-woo to follow Miso and take care of her. While on her way, Miso turns back, and Haein captures a breathtaking picture of her. This is the portrait that we saw at the beginning of the movie hanging at the art gallery. Later, deep inside the cave, Miso's attention is drawn to a locket around Jin-woo's neck. Intrigued, she inquires about its significance. Jin-woo reveals that the locket was a gift from his grandmother, believed to protect him from illness, and he has cherished it since childhood. In a surprising turn of events, their closeness intensifies, and they share a passionate kiss. In the subsequent scene, the trio returns home from the vacation, and an unspoken tension lingers among them. There is a real sense of unease and uncertainty in the air. The following day, Miso makes preparations to leave for her long-awaited destination, Seoul, with her new boyfriend, Ki-hoon. Haein desperately tries to convince her to stay since Miso is her only childhood friend, but her pleas fall on deaf ears. Later, as Haein waves goodbye, she notices Jin-woo's locket around Miso's neck, stirring a flicker of suspicion within her. She questions Miso about the locket's origin but realizes it's too late. In the next scene, Miso arrives in Seoul, thrilled to pursue her dreams. She rents a beautiful apartment and begins working at the same bar as Ki-hoon. However, somewhere along the line, she loses her mobile phone. Unable to use her phone to contact Haein, she resorts to sending a letter describing her situation and sharing that she's working and taking painting classes. Miso paints a picture of a content and fulfilling life in Seoul, although the reality is far from it in response. Haein writes back mentioning her admission to a university, but admitting that her life feels monotonous and unfulfilling. She laments following her father's dreams instead of her own. One night while roaming around work, Miso catches Ki-hoon getting intimate with another girl. Consumed by anger and betrayal, she storms out of the bar, leaving her job behind. Miso's circumstances deteriorate, and she takes on various odd jobs to survive in Seoul. Her life becomes a constant struggle, but she conceals her hardships from Haein, continuing to paint a picture of happiness. She fabricates stories of traveling the world and fulfilling her dreams, even though the reality is harsh and lonely. Haein reads the letters, finding solace in her friend's apparent success and wishing her well. Several months later, Jin-woo approaches Haein, sharing his plans to continue his studies in Seoul. Haein is stunned by the news but realizes there's nothing she can do to prevent his departure. Now she finds herself alone in their small town. Her only friend left long ago, and now her boyfriend is also leaving for Seoul. Meanwhile, Miso's life takes a turn for the worse when her mother passes away, leaving her to face the funeral. Alone, overwhelmed by frustration and despair, she returns to their old town and heads straight to Haein's place. The latter is over the moon to finally have her friend back. However, Miso continues to spin tales of her flourishing life in Seoul, fabricating stories of exotic travels and worldly experiences. She even presents Haein with postcards from various places she claims to have visited. Haein has started having doubts about the stories but nonetheless chooses not to say anything at the moment. Later, the two friends enjoy a pleasant evening outside and check into a hotel. Once in their room, Miso asks Haein to fetch a sanitary pad from her bag. However, To her surprise, she discovers Jin Woo's locket inside. Miso is embarrassed by the discovery and doesn't speak a word. Later that night, they visit a luxurious cafe for dinner. However, upon realizing the expensive prices, Heian suggests leaving. Unwilling to back down, Miso devises a plan to collect money for their meal. She approaches a table occupied by wealthy individuals and offers to mix drinks in exchange for a bottle of wine. To her astonishment, the businessman accepts her proposition. However, Heian disapproves of Miso's actions and abruptly leaves the cafe. She then retrieves her belongings from the hotel room and departs, despite Miso's futile attempts to stop her. The story fast-forwards several years, and Miso has finally found stability working for a resale company. Jin Woo pays her a visit and inquires about Heian. Surprisingly, Miso admits to losing contact with her and shares her own success story. She reveals her romantic involvement with her boss and her plans to relocate to Canada and expand their business. Unfortunately, Miso's contentment is shattered when she notices a gathering of people and an ambulance near her office building. Investigating the commotion, she learns that her boss has taken his own life after falling victim to fraudulent investments. Devastated by the tragedy, Jin Woo supports Miso and brings her to his apartment for solace. In the next scene, Miso attempts to contact Jin Woo but fails to reach him. Worried, she visits his apartment and finds him with Heian. Overwhelmed with emotion, Heian rushes to embrace Miso, expressing her remorse. She then invites her inside and helps her to the bathroom. It is here that Heian notices her boyfriend's locket around Miso's neck and questions how she obtained it. Our protagonist girl cleverly replies that she requested the locket from Jin Woo as a symbol of good luck, hoping to protect herself from the prospect of untimely death. One day, Jin Woo proposes to Heian, and she readily accepts. The couple begins spending time together and becomes very close. But on their wedding day, Heian reflects on her life. After a lot of thinking, she gets cold feet and decides to call off the marriage. Before departing for Seoul, she visits her mother and shares her decision. Her mother advises her to live her life on her own terms and embrace joy to the fullest. Heian arrives in Seoul and coincidentally rents the same apartment that Miso once occupied. After she explores the room, she starts painting a beautiful portrait of her best friend, Miso. Returning to the present, Jin Woo visits Miso and inquires about Heian. Miso reveals that she is no longer in contact with her. She also mentions that she now has a daughter. It is revealed that during Heian's visit to Seoul, she was pregnant and had already decided to raise the child on her own. Miso supported her friend's decision and committed to helping her. The daughter she now cares for is Heian's, and since her birth, she has not seen her biological mother. This is because Heian tragically lost a significant amount of blood during childbirth and succumbed to her injuries. In the final scene, Miso visits Heian's mother and shares the painful truth about her daughter's passing. Overwhelmed with emotion, the woman urges Miso to visit Heian's apartment in Seoul and retrieve her belongings. In the apartment, Miso discovers the incomplete portrait Heian had started, causing her to break down in tears. Determined to honor her friend's memory, Miso decides to finish the portrait. The movie concludes with Miso attending an art gallery accompanied by Heian's daughter. There, she reveals that all the portraits credited to Heian were actually created by her. The blog's entries under Heian's name were also written by Miso in an effort to keep her friend's memory alive.